Mhm.
I was I was actually head judge. Haha.
Mhm. You're managing,
Um,
like, the stream games pretty much, basically, right? Oh,
yeah.
check to make sure that the OBS is set to the correct mic, I guess. We might
No
need to
sound.
we might need to redo that intro. Alright, so,
Okay.
I guess we'll do the intro that
Oh,
Mike was
sure,
trying to.
yeah.
Okay, guys,
Oh,
so,
wait. I think
oh,
they said there we go. Oh,
is it good?
I think so? Uh, yeah, we need Still can't hear Mike. Apparently they can hear us, but not you, so sounds like it's a you problem.
Alright, so, while Mike figures that out, I guess we'll redo the intro. So, welcome everybody to the Tressa's Collectibles, Bushiroad. Who was one of the commentators for the NA region, and then of course Sam, who not only participated in AO himself, but also was the head judge and the stream judge for the NA region.
Alright, let us know if, I think I fixed it. If chat can let us know if the sound is working properly for my end now. I did get a new mic, and I apparently OBS. I need to change it on both OBS and Discord.
Oh, in the middle of that, you apparently muted everyone's audio. So like I tune in and then I'm like halfway through the sentence and you can't hear me.
All right, let's just start. This will make for some great blooper material. Okay.
Holy
This is some real New Year, new Mike energy right now.
Yeah. Okay. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another Trust Us Collectibles live stream. My name is Mike, and joining me today, as usual, is the Trust Us Collectibles crew. We have Randall and Simu. Randall on the top left, Simu on the top right. And today we are going to be going over the most recent Bushiroad Rumble Online event that happened this past weekend. Bushiroad Rumble Online was a series of really large-scale online Weiss Schwarz tournaments. 3 regions, Asia, Oceania, as well as Europe, and also North America. So the Randall and Simu were actually pretty big parts of this event. Randall, if you guys didn't tune in to some streams, Randall was the one of the North American commentators alongside Connor and Tony, and then Simu was the head judge for the NA's region's tournament. So he was running everything on the back end. Even though you guys didn't see him on the screen, he was very integral to the success of the tournament as well. So today I'm going to talk with Randall and Simu and then have them share about some of their experiences, and then we're also going to go over some of the tournament results from all 3 regions. But just kind of just say hi, and then we'll get right into it. Yeah.
All right, Sam, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, coming from the perspective of a judge, we're always trying to compare ourselves to past events and see where we can do better and you know, how to improve, how to make the experience better for all the players and stuff like that. So if you guys remember, I'm gonna call back to the first online Bushiroad tournament, BSFO, Bushiroad Spring Fest. That one was, you know, the first time Bushiroad had ever organized an online tournament of that scale, and it was definitely a new experience for all of us, and honestly, quite a bit of a struggle. We came in without really, we had like no idea what we were doing, honestly, at the time. Like that was the first time I had to judge a webcam event, so like a lot of the time I was just like the entire tournament, I was just thinking like, okay, what do I need to check? Like, how do I do a deck check? Like, what do I have to like watch out for? And you know, a lot of stuff happened that event, and I learned a lot from various things. And so this event definitely, you know, we came in way more prepared, the entire staff and team. This time using Battlefy, which you know, had its benefits, pros and cons, but a much better software than what we used for BSFO. And hopefully the entire tournament was much more smoother for the players. I think for the judging staff, we felt like we had a lot more control. We knew what we were doing. Even though I think we had fewer judges this time, it just felt like the entire tournament ran way more smoothly. So, but I don't know. That's just from my perspective. What does chat say? What do the players say about how the tournament was run? I would love to hear some feedback or some questions about that.
Oh, Mike, do you have stream audio on? I think some people in chat are saying there's echo. You might be having stream audio feeding back into
Okay, hold on.
your desktop audio or something.
Yeah. All right. I keep forgetting. Okay, this is why I don't host streams, because I'm bad at this kind of stuff. All right, hold on.
It's okay.
Oh, it's just because. Okay, Keck. Probably just because no headphones, Keck. Okay, so I guess I'll go next. So,
all right, we should be good.
So from the commentator's perspective, it's a lot different, I guess, than Sam's perspective on the event, because with Sam being a judge, he has to be like running around doing a lot of stuff. He has a lot of duties to take care of, and as a commentator, like we do have to like be on top of the things that are happening, like the games and the decks, and just looking at everything that's happening and trying to convey that to the audience. But ultimately, for me, both this time and the previous time that I did commentary for the online events, it was just honestly just a lot of fun, and it's something that like just as a Weiss player, and this is like the sort of thing that I already really enjoy doing, I guess, when I watch people play games, is I like to see what choices they go through, what's going through their head, and try to think about what strategies they're employing, like why they're employing these strategies. So it's really not so much of a job for me personally. I'm not sure about the other commentators. Like for me, it just felt like a very fun experience overall, and I got to watch a lot of people. I got to have fun while at the same time watching all these other people have fun playing the game as well. So I think that from the commentator perspective, it's just a lot less of a maybe like stressful thing than it is for like some of the other staff members. But that being said, the overall package that came together and what you guys saw on stream, it definitely looked so good. Like I'm sure both Mike and Sam would agree that like the final finished product of what we saw on the stream, as just this product of what all the staff was able to put together, it just came out super well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know you've made it when you're judging for this hobby that we've been so passionate about, right? Simu, Randall have obviously been in the game for a long time now, and to see that we've come to this point where we have really large scale tournaments, and then Randall's an official commentator, Simu's an official judge. We're all working on this product together to deliver a good experience for the viewers and the players alike. So, for you to say that this was more of a fun thing, I think really goes to speak about that's just really awesome. If you love what you do, then it doesn't become work anymore, right? So that's really good to see. So we'll talk a bit more about your guys' experiences. But first, I do want to go over just a bit briefly about the actual tournament results, because this is the first time in a good amount of time that we have had large-scale results for the English format. So let's just go over those starting now. So special shout out to IanTCG and WeissTeaTime for these graphics. I did link the Twitter that I got this from in the description, so you guys can check those out yourselves. We're gonna start with AO because that was just timeline-wise the first tournament to happen. So for AO, the top 8: 4 Data Live, 2 Kaguya, 1 Fate, and 1 Adventure Time. So what do you guys think about this?
Sam, would you like to go first?
Yeah, that's a lot of Fate, which is a little bit surprising because Fate's not too popular, I think, of a series. When we think about going into BRO, I think the big names were Data Life Kaguya, with some smattering of like, oh, maybe Ruby will be good. I don't think Fate was on anybody's radar, even though they did get quite a significant amount of support in the new Heaven's Field booster.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this particular Fate was the coin flip Fate with Gilgamesh.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
This was Gilgamesh coin flip with a green package with the Sakura Azusa, which I thought was super neat. I hadn't seen this kind of coin flip before. With the level 3 Saber top end from the new Heaven's Field Volume 2 set. With the Excalibur from Fate Zero, which has 2 soul triggers. I thought that was super neat. But yeah, and then overall, Data Live did end up winning. I believe the finals was a mirror match for 8 standby Data Live. And then obviously one of the standby Data Lives had to go through, and then they did win AO. So let's go on to the next region, EU, where we have kind of a similar graphic. Half of the pie chart is still Data Live, so that's 4 Data Live players. And then for the other 4, we have Kaguya, Ruby, Bofuri, and Sword Art Alicization. And I believe in this tournament, Bofuri won the whole thing, which is very exciting. And I believe on their way to victory, they defeated 3 Data Live players. And if I recall the list correctly, it was tailored specifically to destroy standby matchups. So it does seem like they got the job done as intended. They built the deck in a certain way to beat a specific meta they were expecting, and it performed very well.
Yeah, a lot of people after the tournament was done, everyone was just referring to this Bofuri Slayer or this Bofuri player as the Dow Slayer or the standby Slayer.
Yeah.
And this guy was definitely hailed as the people's champ at the end of this tournament.
Yeah, that was really awesome to see. And then apparently the Sword Art, if I'm not wrong, it was a 8-win Alice with a double Alice combo. So another deck that does really well against standby. So I think these particular players, they made the right call, and they presumed that the field would be very standby based. Obviously, Data Live being one of the strongest decks in the meta, Kaguya being half standby, being able to bounce 2/2 Ishigamis and 1/1 Kaguyas can also be very good value. And then just things like 8 standby Slime, and just plenty of opportunities to get value from bouncing your opponent's characters, and the Bofuri deck and the Alice deck being able to remove targets from the board both performed well. And then finally we have NA, and this was a bit more spread out with 2 Data Life, 2 Slime, 2 Sword Art, a Love Life Sunshine, and a Ruby. I believe the 2 Data Life decks were both 8 standby. The 2 Slime decks, I know one of them was 8 standby. I'm not sure if both of them were 8 standby.
They were both 8 standby.
Okay,
yeah.
8 standby. I think one of the Sal was 8 standby, and then the other Sal was Pan's Book.
Yeah, it was the Shinon centric build.
The Shinon level 1 from originally from Ordinal Scale, which got support in Alice 1, I think. But yeah, the level 1 Shinon Climax combo into Last Shot Shinon, which is really crazy to hear that Last Shot Shinon made tops in the 2022 tournament. But that just goes to show the power of Last Shot, right? And then Love Life Sunshine, level 1 Chica, the typical Mirai ticket, package at level 2. You know, level 1 Chica has always done very well against level 1 standby boards, and at level 2, Mirai Ticket is as powerful as ever, so they managed to get a top there. And I believe the Ruby was 8 Gate with the level 1 Trial Deck combo package with level 1 Ruby into level 2 Blake, or level 2
Weiss.
Yeah. And then the level 3 Cinder, which has been a very popular set of climax choices for Ruby players recently. And I believe ultimately the finals was 8 Standby Slime against Sword Art, right? Sword Art last shot.
The Shinon build, yeah.
Yeah, and then the Slime deck won. Yeah. Any thoughts on these tops here?
I guess the one thing that stood out to me so we have 4 8 standby decks in this top 8, because it was one of the Sao, both of the Slimes, and then one of the Data Live, and then the other Data Live was Sam Hikago with his return to top 8 after his first place at BSFO.
It was the 5 standby 3 choice deck, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so he came back with that build, and we did see out of the 2 other decks, the one-ofs, Love Live Sunshine and Ruby, they did both have a lot of counter mechanic, a lot of counterplay to these standby decks. So one thing that we saw in the Swiss rounds was the Love Live Sunshine player, Chronose, with some very good counterplay into standby, specifically with his use of the Mirai Ticket Chica Yo at level 2. So this was something similar to what we saw from Ken Zabuton when he played Love Live Sunshine back in BSFO, where he would utilize the bodies of the Chicas because they get 2,000 power for each of the Yos, right? So he would double early play, double early play, sorry. So it would be double Chica, double Yo, and then he would just leave the Chicas in the front to be massive. And then it's like the standby player would have to try to answer these 14k bodies. And if they can't, it's like, okay, standby player's losing their board.
And then that's when you start going in with like all the Yos, right? But like you're prioritizing the Chicas' huge power to beat over the board first, is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the Ruby player's case, something that we saw in both the AO stream as well as the NA stream was his use of a particular tech card that is this is actually a card that like Sam was pointing out when we were like looking through some of the cards in the set, and I was like, nah, this card's like pretty whatever. And then it shows up on AO stream, and then round 1, the 8 standby Ruby player is like actually just getting perma-griefed by this 1/0 Nolan. Because the Nolan says you can choose one of your opponent's characters. It can't move until the end of their next turn. So that 2/2 Yang just kind of sat there for like 4 turns or something until it got standbyed over.
Yeah, I was also partially influenced by, I think it was as well Pittsburgh Weiss Schwarz. I was looking at their video and I was listening to some of their discussions on some of the cards, and they were talking about this Nolan. I was like, okay, I'll give this a shot. So I tried it myself, and it was actually pretty decent. Yeah, it was definitely a good addition to the. To kind of be able to counterplay, standby decks, and not even just standby decks. It has pretty good application of just, freezing one of your opponent's characters can come up useful in a lot of situations. And the fact that it's also just on a cost 0 bomb, compared to some other useless effect or no effect at all, makes it, not feel bad to play, even if the freeze effect doesn't come into play, because at the very worst, you can just trade 1 for 1 on board. So. Okay.
Yeah.
And,
For me, I think the interesting thing from my perspective is the EU results are for top 8 are really cool. Obviously, the Bo Free player who won, playing the anti-standby tech, also the 8-win Sword Art deck. And I do think that teching against the meta is very powerful. But I think the bigger story is that like you're not always successful. So the funny story is these decks appeared again in the NA side. And I was actually keeping tabs on them because I wanted to feature them on stream, because I was like, oh yeah, I want to feature 8-win because I think it's good. I want to feature this anti-standby Buffy deck because I think it's good. And then they both end up dropping pretty early into the tournament, probably just bad matchups or whatever. So, we see the top 8 where like, oh man, these decks are like unbeatable. But the true story is like, for every one success, you're going to have a couple of failures, right? A couple of like runs that didn't pan out.
Right.
And so... it's just the way that the coin flips, the die rolls.
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool part about the deck building and deck selection process when you go into a tournament, right? Because obviously going into Bushiroad Rumble Online, I think most people had a pretty good idea of what they were expecting, right? Obviously Data Life, Kaguya, probably a good amount of Slime, probably a good amount of just, the popular decks. So to bring something like 8-Wind Alice or, that particular Bolfuri deck, they were very clearly targeting these specific matchups. But like you said, if they have a stroke of bad luck or if they don't hit the right matchups, then, they might just be, in the end, another number in the overall statistic instead of being here featured on the top 8. So I'm sure there were other people that, had similar ideas that, they tried to tech for specific matchups, but unfortunately they did not make it, and, only 8 could survive. Which is pretty rough considering that overall, I believe AO had around like 80-some-ish players, EU also had like around 80-ish players, and then North America had over 200 registered players, right?
The final count was
200
166 players
so 166
competing in round 1.
Actually showing up then.
That's still a lot, though.
Which is
that's basically the other two.
Amount, yeah.
Other two regions combined, basically.
Yeah, which, I mean, these are really, really nice numbers to see. And I also really liked the fact that, we did get to see a lot of decks that weren't decks and players that weren't necessarily like optimal decks or, not necessarily very experienced players, but, they still decided to join and they still decided to want to play and have a good time. And I think that was really awesome as well. In particular, I know because I think, Simu, you were in charge of choosing the games for the NA region, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we got to see a lot of varied gameplay, and usually it was like X1s. But like for me personally, at least, I didn't get to catch all the action. But for the AO stream, I was looking like Friday night before bed, and I saw some really interesting decks, and to put it mildly.
Sam's like, no, not like.
Can we not talk about
Yeah,
this?
we don't have to talk about it. I'm not gonna bring it up. I'm not gonna bring it up unless you want to bring it up. So.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
that's like a lead-in though.
Yeah, but yeah, the point I wanted to bring up is I'm really happy that like it does seem like there's more players that want to get into Weiss, and these players, they are stepping out maybe of their comfort zone and going, setting up their camera, getting their setup set up, and then willing to play with people from around the world potentially, and I think that's really awesome. I've really seen a large increase in the number of players in Weiss Schwarz recently, so that's awesome to see, and I have very high hopes for the future.
I'm just gonna say that we all know who the Kantai Collections 1 win is.
All right, moving on. So we have this very awesome graph here of the total top 8s for all 3 regions. Obviously, since we had 4 Data Live's top 2 regions and 2 Data Live's top NA, Data Live is the most represented set, and then we have a smattering of other sets.
This is just all the top 24s, right?
Yeah, this is just top 8, combined top 8 from all the regions.
Right. Okay.
So the big thing to me was that I honestly expected to see a lot more Kaguya, both in terms of number of total players playing Kaguya, as well as the number of tops for Kaguya. And I have several ideas about why I think that number was lower than I anticipated, but it was nonetheless surprising to see because, personally speaking, I do think that Kaguya is probably still just one of the best decks, if not like the best deck. Obviously, there's a lot of things that either like Data Live or Kaguya could like kind of change to maybe get an upper edge against each other, but it did seem like Data Live just kind of farmed. To put it mildly, or not mildly, to put it bluntly, they kind of farmed a lot of the competition. But that's honestly one of the best things Data Live is good for, right? It's like against decks that aren't prepared to deal with its big boards, it just kind of just goes off, and you really have a hard time recuperating in terms of like resources and catching back up because of things like the 2-2 Toka and the 1-0 Toka back row. And then like refresh counter, meaning that like if you're behind on board and you're behind on damage, there's really, really not much recourse you have of coming back from the game.
Yeah, it's like something
Yeah,
that
I
we've
mean-
seen. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. You can go first.
I was gonna say it's something that we've like, because on our channel we've been featuring like a bit of Data Live every now and then, just because we know it's like one of the really prominent decks, and it's one that people would be interested to see some of these newer releases going up against. Basically, like Dao being kind of held as one of those like gold standard decks, and what some of those matches just like come down to is like, okay, first attack, we're going in, and then that one gets canceled, and it was a front crash, and then suddenly like 2/2 Tokas and like 1/0 Tokas are just all right. I guess none of the rest of the damage is gonna stick either, just because we're gonna be like manipulating the top deck, and it's just the sort of thing that, as Mike said, like if you're not prepared to deal with it, and this sort of thing just happens, like one small piece of bad luck just turns into like a complete runaway for Data Life sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking specifically to the Kaguya matchup, I was preparing Kaguya for playing an AO, and one of the big problems with the Kaguya Data Life matchup is that Kaguya has very little answers to 1/1 Yoshino. And if you can't deal with 1/1 Yoshino, you really can't challenge the 2/2 Toka board with your Shirogane, because the Yoshino just runs in front of the Shirogane, removes your Shirogane, you don't have the cross-turn board presence, and it's just like the Data player gets to run away with the game still. And then Kaguya's early game, well, Kaguya's level 0 game is phenomenal, but their level 1 game is really bad, and it really matches poorly against a well-prepared Data Live level 1 game. If they can have a 1/1 and a 2/2 out, as Kaguya, you really have no options. So definitely in my testing, I tried a bunch of different stuff for the matchup. But yeah, I think if you just took what was considered the best standard Kaguya list going into this tournament against the experience of most Data Life players, I don't think you have any chance at all.
Oh yeah, you think the matchup is pretty poorly favored it's favored quite heavily towards Data Life and not so much for Kaguya in your experience?
I think it's like 20-80, not gonna lie.
Okay,
if you just take the standard like no changes Kaguya list against the current Data Life list, it's like 20-80.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you are speaking as our resident Kaguya expert, Mr. Max Ready JP Kaguya. And I know you have tried a lot of different things to try to kind of fix that matchup, right? I know you, because we were testing out the level 0 Shirogane anti-runner, which could stop the Yoshino 1/1 from running around, and also it's good against the mirror matchup, kills the level 0 Kaguya runner as well as the K runner. But eventually you did settle on kind of just like a completely different build. But yeah,
Right.
to hear from you, who has tested Kaguya so much, say that like this matchup is very unfavored, kind of does come in line with the results that we see here, both in terms of overall representation as well as the top 8 results. So I think everything makes sense here.
Yeah, meanwhile, Sam's like, "No, my secret tech, the leaks. No, don't
I
do
mean,
it."
it wasn't leaked because Simu played that list on stream. We didn't feature it on our YouTube because it was kind of scuffed. But he did play that deck.
Oh yeah, the Miyukis, right? Yeah, I
Oh
ended
wait,
up
no,
moving away from the Miyukis.
we did play it one game on the channel because he played against you.
Yeah.
Oh,
in
did
one
it?
game.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember now. Yeah.
We did, and then it was the game where I played a gate at level 1.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
You played.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah,
That game was pretty scuffed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I think I ended up not liking the Miyuki because while it does stop the Yoshino if they choose to front row it, it doesn't stop the Yoshino if they back row it. And I think if a Data Life player, like figured out that I was trying to answer their Yoshinos in the front row, they would just put it in the back row, and I wouldn't be able to stop anything. So
it was just a case of like the Data Life player just had outs to like your potential outs, and it wasn't a guaranteed thing. So it's kind of like
Correct.
a flip either way, even if you detect this card, which might have lowered your percentage win rate in other matchups, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And speaking of some back row field swap shenanigans, counterplay to Shirogane, keep a lookout, guys, for Sam's channel for some Hololive. Sir, the big tech coming up later on. Oh wait, no, you already have it. You already
No,
did
I already
the
have
video on it, right?
no. They
Oh, yeah,
actually no people have actually been using that tech though.
Yeah, the Shion, right? The Shion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Shion.
Yeah.
Apparently the Nova tourney winner was running 3 of them. I was like, wow.
I mean, if
Yeah,
you're
all right,
playing,
go to Sam's channel for
if
the
you're
hidden
running
tech.
Rusia, I think like since people are so prepared to deal with against Rusia and other similar things, you have to run that card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's like a good example of like the kind of the ingenuity or the thought process when you're dealing with like like meta decks and answers. You just have to find that one silver bullet if you can, and you have to test it, right? Sometimes it works, like the Xion in Hololive. Sometimes it doesn't, like this Yuki anti-runner. But the important thing is you have to make the effort, go for it, and then if it pays off, you become like the EU champs, right? Just like you really found the answer and it worked.
All right, so I think that about does it in terms of just our tournament recap. But I do want to go into throwing a couple of questions at Randall and Simu, since give you guys some of their thoughts. What's up?
Actually, one thing I think that we should take a look at before we move on to before we move out of the BRO reflections.
Yeah.
I do want to take a look at the distribution of the decks played, because we looked at what got top 8 in each region, but we also kind of need to take that information and compare it to the big picture. So one thing that I really wanted to touch on, obviously we knew that Data Live was the top 3 or the top represented deck in all 3 regions. Specifically in NA, it was 26 players, and in EU and AO, it was 20 apiece. So what I think is really interesting about this is that, considering that NA was twice as large player size wise as the other 2 regions, DAO was only 6 players more than either of those regions.
Yeah, and in exchange, we got like 20 Ruby players out of nowhere who decided to join for NA. So I think that's pretty cool.
Ruby was like actually like almost non-existent in the other 2 regions. There was like 4 apiece, I think. And then meanwhile in NA there was like 24 people, 24 Ruby players.
I do want to say, in terms of specifically Ruby representation, I do think a factor in that was I don't think Ruby was shipping out properly worldwide. I think Europe in particular had a lot of delays in getting their Ruby shipments, and I don't think people got theirs the same time as we got ours over here in NA. So I think that could have been a really big factor, actually. But it's also interesting to see that, like, for the NA region, which did obviously get all of Ruby product on time and had plenty of time to test with it, that Ruby did see such a large rep, and it did seem like there were a lot of different builds too. I think, like, obviously right now people are very high on 8 Door or 8 Gate with the level 1 TD and the level 3 Cinder, as we talked about, but also things like 8 Standby or like Choice Top End or like Blake Top End. But Ruby overall just does seem to be a set that just caters to every sort of crowd, and has the necessary utility at level 0 and the tech options at level 1 to deal with various matchups depending on how you want to play against your opponents. So unfortunate that we didn't really see that many Rubies. I think, like, for its representation, we at least in NA we saw 1, but NA overall was just pretty varied in general, so I think that's like a good thing.
Yeah, we were able to see a lot of Ruby across all the stream games, though. We saw, not only did we see a lot of Ruby, we saw a lot of different builds of Ruby. So, like, in AO, okay, so I didn't get to see, like, all of the games from, like, EU, because that's basically while I'm asleep. But AO, I do remember that in the first round, so we saw Yuri's deck, the 8 Gate deck. We saw that in both AO and NA, and then we also saw him play against 8 Standby in round 1 AO, and then in some of the Swiss rounds for NA on stream, we saw both a 8 choice, I believe it was 8 choice, that went up against Dan's Suguwaifu, and then we also got to see Anthony ICG playing Gold Bar. Definitely not something we see every day. So that was also very neat to see.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then Ian and Lonely Prince, they are saying that confirming that Ruby did come in late for a lot of Europeans.
Okay, so yeah,
even as late as like a week before Bro, or like a Card Market, which is like the TCG player of Europe, not even having the cards available for purchase until after deck registration ended. So I think that does play a pretty significant factor. Yeah. Anything else with the tournament results, Randall and Simu?
I think as far as the results, I think we pretty much covered everything. I was really happy to see. Yeah, I was pretty happy to see a lot of the diversity. Like, even though I think that's a really big important thing about Weiss Schwarz is that even if your deck is like not the top tier, it's still, if it's your favorite series and it's something that you want to bring, I think that it's nice that like these players are able to bring those series and still have fun in an online event like this. Because as we said earlier, we were looking to get as many stream games as possible that were from X1 and XOs only. And like, if you look at the NA stream games, there was like so much diversity. We almost never saw the same deck twice throughout like the entire Swiss. And considering that we were able to have so many different decks appearing in those stream games, I think was really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got some complaints from players that there was not enough data live in the stream games.
Wow. Actually, man, like last time, I'm pretty sure like there were people being like, "Oh, it's data live again. Oh, it's data live again. Oh my god, it's data live again. Top cut. Oh, look, data live mirror. Oh my god, can we see stuff other than data live?" And then this time it's like, where's the data live, guys?
Yeah, I think from the very specific role of as someone that picks the matches, if we were expecting that there would be a lot of data live in top 8, that kind of further is a further reason as to pick matches that aren't data live in Swiss, right? Because I'm not sure if people want to see data live in Swiss and then data live in Swiss and it's top 8 and it's still data live. And one of the fun things about Weiss, like Randall mentioned, is you can play your favorite series, rep your favorite characters, and as long as you deck build well, have knowledge of your matchups, and you play well, you can still have a chance. And we only brought NA was only X1 games and higher, and we did see a smattering of different series. And then, like for example, in EU, like who would have expected Bolfrey of all sets to win EU, much less against the likes of data live, right? If we think about just the typical Bolfrey lists, I don't think I wouldn't have thought that Bolfrey had any chance, from a statistics point of view, to beat 3 data lives in a row. But he or the person made it happen. He built the deck in a certain way. They built the deck in a certain way, and they came out on top. And I think that's just such a great example of just deck building ingenuity, knowing your matchups, knowing how your own strains. And then also a big thing is, I think people, obviously this is very true for not just Weiss but for any card game, where the popular matchups, what the popular deck lists are, and if you go in with an unfamiliar deck to the general public, right, with maybe like a more rogue deck, unfamiliar climax combos, unfamiliar tech options, your opponent might play into it, and then you just like win the game that way, right? And that's happened multiple times throughout Weiss Schwarz's history. So it's very nice to see that it's still possible in a day and age where everyone thinks that if you're not playing Dead Alive or Kaguya or one of these really strong perceived series, then you can't win. And that is certainly not the case here.
Or you could just be like this Fate player in AO. Just freaking
Yeah, like sometimes you just see these decks. Like, I think I honestly think that the Sword Art player that we ended up seeing in NA was sort of employing that same mentality where, like, if you just hit them hard and fast enough, it doesn't matter what they're playing.
Yeah,
that's the sort of feeling that I got, because he was running like that, like Summer Festival Suguha, getting like that plus soul, and as we saw in the stream games, he just kind of hit his opponents really hard and really fast.
Yeah.
It just kind of got the wind knocked out of him for a second. It's just like, oh god, why am I here so early? How do I get out of here?
Yeah.
And that's like, it's actually a weakness of standby, because standby needs turns to set up, right? Because your standby card that you standby out doesn't immediately impact the board usually. So standby's main resource is turns, and if you can take away their turns, then
and if you think about it in that perspective, in terms of that Sword Art player's, mindset going into specific matchups, if their game was to just push for soul damage, be a lot more aggressive, right? Then it makes a ton of sense why he chose Last Shot Shinon as his finisher. Because Last Shot Shinon can potentially finish games by herself, right? And the faster you go, the less likely your opponent has a chance of, fixing their deck state, being compressed, and you just need a 4 to stick, maybe a 3 to stick, and it's all over. If you get 6 stock, 2 last shots, very likely for your opponent to die. And I assume that's probably what happened with a lot of his games. Okay. All right, so that does it for the kind of just talking about just the overall representation as well as tops for the tournaments. But I do want to talk with Randall and Simu and give you guys a bit of insight about, from their perspective, Randall, one of the official commentators for NA, and Simu being the head judge for NA, kind of how they view the event. I'll start by saying that obviously I didn't play because I was working on both days, but I got to check out a lot of the games when I could, and from a product perspective, just from a finished product perspective, I was extremely impressed with the quality of the streams. The information presentation where like a card would be brought up as they were played or as they were being referenced. And it just seemed like the event went pretty smoothly overall. And from a consumer point of view, from someone consuming this content, I had no complaints, honestly. But yeah, I'll leave the floor to you guys as to something. Maybe there are some things you can't bring up because of maybe Bushiroad doesn't allow you to say anything. But if you guys want to talk about anything in particular with your experiences, I know we talked about this before a bit at the beginning of the stream. But here's your chance to kind of go a bit more in detail, or maybe talk about a specific scenarios that happened. Now let's start with Simu as the judge.
Well, I think the biggest challenge every time we do an online event, or between the last one and this one, is always the webcam. Webcam issues are the number one cause of delays, cause of concerns, worries. Sometimes your webcam's not good enough, and that's definitely a hindrance to a lot of players. And we try our best to accommodate for players. Because we want to respect all players who want to play, even if they don't have like the state of art streaming software equipment or whatever. But I mean, there has to be a line, right? There's a point where your webcam is just too pixely, just too many like squares that we can't tell what card they are, or you're like lagging too much that we have to say like you can't continue. And I think that was like a huge issue in BSFO. I think everybody just try to whip out like their webcams from 20 years ago and like try to play, and we had like so many webcam issues, and that like really stalled the tournament. But this time, surprisingly, webcam issues were a lot better. I think people kind of like, since it's the second time, they were kind of like, okay, this doesn't fly, or like if I want to participate, I'll I'll scrounge around like $50, get like a 1080p webcam and participate. So I think that was really good. And I mean, it's just kind of like something that you kind of need to have, especially for stream games. I don't know if you guys remember from BSFO stream, but we had some scuffed webcams on stream, and this time we were definitely very careful about picking like good quality webcams for a stream. So if you want to get featured on stream, get a good webcam. Actually, funny story, I was going through the different players we were tracking to showcase, and one of the things that I actually wanted to show on stream was like high rarity stuff, because it's not always you get to see like the shiny bling. But the problem with high rarity stuff and like bad lighting and low webcam quality is that it just becomes like literally you cannot see it. It's just white, right? Which defeats the purpose. I forgot which player it was, but I was going through the channels and I saw this guy, and he had like max rarity ruby, just like four para, like 4 ruby, everything, and his webcam was like 4K. It was like the most pristine webcam I've seen in my life. And I was just like, immediately wrote him down. I was like, he was X1 too. And we're just like, we're showing this guy next round. And that was like the round 3 or round 4 Ruby match. And oh my god, that guy's webcam feed was just it was impeccable. So really, like, if you, that's like the
that was the guy that was against Dan, right? Because I don't remember exactly which Ruby player. Actually, now that I think about it, it had to have been that guy, because the other two Rubies were Nico and then Anthony. So it was the round 3. I remember in part of the cast, like Tony was just like, "Yo, this Ruby player out here with the drip, he's got the max rarity bling bling," and he was just like so impressed, and he kept bringing it up. I thought that was really funny.
and you could appreciate it because the webcam was like it was actually like 4K. It was so good.
Right, guys. You guys heard it from the man himself. To get featured on the next online Bushiroad tournament stream, max ready your deck, have a good webcam, and BX1. Very simple. Very simple.
Honestly, if you can check those 3 things off, you have a pretty good chance.
Yeah. No, and then if budget's an issue, then maybe we max ready maybe a cheaper deck. Maybe you max ready like Gurren Lagann, like Spirals or something. I don't know, anti-spirals.
Speaking of not as expensive max ready, I think I remember you saying because we were looking at IanTCG's deck after, and like his deck name was like, why did I max rarity this? And then I think you were saying that like you looked at the list and like the max rarity list was like $600 or something like that.
At the time, when Mob, like several months after Mob released, like SPs were like super cheap. You could find Dimples for like $40-$50. Ritsu's for like $60-$70. So like all the SPs were really cheap. Obviously they're not anymore. But at the time, the deck wouldn't have been that expensive to max rarity. But yeah.
I mean, like that deck looked good too. Like those SPs look really nice. I think. Yeah, like those like neon names and like on the black background. That looks really good.
Yeah, Mob High Rarity looks amazing, and I really appreciate when Ishiguro SR came up. You wanna talk about that?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So, so like. When we're like streaming, we have like our production manager that's like giving us all the like instructions. It's like, oh yeah, like the deck one's ready. You guys can transition to this, right? And then so the thing is that our production manager, he like isn't familiar with Weiss. So the way that we had the cards appear on screen is, so you know how like we're rotating, right? So like 2 of us would be casting at a time, and then the third one of us, between me, Connor, and Tony, of course, would basically be like on break, but like not really on break because we're manning the system that makes the cards appear on screen. And then so there were certain cards where like when they would appear on the overlay, our production manager would just be like, what is that? And the biggest one was definitely the Ishiguro SR, because this guy Ishiguro making that like derpy face, and he's just like, literally, what is this? And we were just cracking up because he just has no idea about this IP, and he's just like, the card arts for this set for like Mob are just like these are like some of the weirdest arts.
Yeah. And then there was also like, I think you guys also brought up, maybe there was like when the guy was like, he saw the full name of Bofuri.
Oh yeah, multiple people on production staff apparently. Yeah, not exposing any names obviously, but like some people that I guess weren't as familiar with like Weiss or anime titles, because the like title thing underneath like the players' names, I guess those were more catered towards like Vanguard clan names, which are a lot shorter, right? It's like Dark Irregulars, Kaguro, Royal Paladin. And then meanwhile, in Weiss, it's like, that time I got reincarnated as a slime. Bofuri, I didn't want to get hurt, so I maxed defense or something like that. Like, these names are just like massive. And then some of the crew was just like, what are these names? How do we make them fit? They don't fit. And that's just a pretty small, funny detail of the production side.
I do want to ask you 1 or 2 questions, Simu, that I was wondering. So obviously, since Bushiroad Rumble Online is an online event and the regions aren't region locked, naturally, if you had the time, you could go participate in any region. So I assume that naturally led to maybe some language barriers. So I was wondering how you guys kind of resolved maybe if there was maybe someone that didn't speak English very well. And maybe there was just maybe some communication issues, how you guys resolved that.
Yeah, oh my gosh, what a great question. This honestly is such an amazing question. So I believe round 6 of the stream game on NA side, it was between Fate and Rascal Bunny Girl. If my memory serves me correctly, the Rascal player, he was the only player who brought Bunny Girl into the tournament, and he at that time was like 5-1. So we were all like, okay, we gotta show this guy. And his hammer looked fine, so I was like, oh, let's go. And we get into the game, and he just goes like, Kero? Like, and it's just like, and he starts just like, and we're like, wait, what? And he just like spits out like 3 sentences of just like super fast Spanish. And
Necesito like, español translación.
Yeah, it was like, I was like, wait, what? What's going on? And then And then his opponent was just like, and actually it was funny because I think his opponent like knew
was
a bit
Kenneth.
of Spanish. Yes, it was
Kenneth.
Kenneth. Yeah, he knew a little bit of Spanish, so he like actually like responded in a bit of Spanish, and then he like egged him on even more. So then he just spat out another paragraph, and then Kenneth was like,
no.
"Okay, we need a Spanish-speaking judge," and I was just like, "Get a Spanish-speaking judge, get a Spanish-speaking judge," and then but it turns out, like we have amazing people working for us, Bushiroad. We actually had a Spanish-speaking judge, and then the judge came in, and he totally helped. We had actually 3 stream judges that game, and the judge definitely helped clarify stuff. But what amazed me most was that the Spanish-speaking judge only had to talk like maybe 2 or 3 times, and the rest of the time, the guy who only spoke Spanish just like knew what to do. Like he like just understood game mechanics, like the simple terms, like encore, attack, even like bounce, like memory. Like he was just able to communicate just like through gesturing, through these simple words, and then like, I mean, definitely was probably gonna be like it was probably difficult for both players because of the language barrier, but they made it work. And that was one of the best stream games we had on the NA stream.
Yeah,
that game was like crazy epic, right?
That stream game was actually the match made in heaven from the perspective of the level 3 games. That was actually so funny.
Yeah, and that was the game with basically the biggest language barrier I had seen in a Weiss game to date. So that's just like an amazing story. I'm so glad you asked me about that. I totally get to share that cool experience.
All right. All right. So let's go over to the commentating side now. So Randall, as one of the NA commentators, we've already talked about this a bit before, but compared to BSFO, where it was just you and Connor, this time it's you, Connor, and Tony. You guys. All commentated on day 2, where it was the top 8, if I'm correct. But for day 1, it was you guys were rotating 2 commentators, and then 1 was off. And then they were kind of like on break, like you said, but they were also manning the overlay. So how was that experience overall for you?
I definitely preferred this system over the BSFO, mainly because like for BSFO we actually just like got a break in the middle, but like that was like everybody getting a break in the middle, not just like production side but also like player side, if I remember correctly. So it ended up being like for the tournament ended up like dragging on a little bit longer for BSFO by comparison, just because of that break in the middle. That being said, this tournament being 8 rounds, it did end up going pretty long anyways. Like I think from the time we had to check in until the time we like turned the stream off, I think was probably like 10 hours.
Wow.
But being able to have that break, but not really a break in the middle where we're like rotating out, I think that definitely like helped out a lot, especially because of how much like talking we were doing. I think it would have been significantly more daunting if it was only 2 of us.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I think one of the biggest things, besides being able to kind of rest your throat, not talk, maybe grab some lunch while you're on the overlay, it's also just, I think, how mentally taxing it has to be on top of the just be in the zone. Just being aware of all the cards, keeping track of where the climaxes are, making sure your sentences come out as coherent sentences, and that takes a lot of mental energy. And I'm really impressed by all of the commentators that we had for this event. It was a really, really job well done. And you guys were able to provide high level commentary the entire way through. And I think that being able to get a break, get a rest, and then maybe let your mind cool down a bit, it can definitely be a very big help. And also just the fact that maybe people want to see a bit of diversity. Maybe the same 2 people on cam the entire 2 days. Maybe people want to see a bit more commentators. So this also opens up the possibility of potential commentators joining us for future events, right? Because if there's only 3 regions and there's only 2 commentators for each region, that's only just 6 commentators. But if we can add more to the rotation, not only do the commentators get to rest a bit more, we also get to feature more Weiss Schwarz community members on a prominent event like BRO and BSFO. So overall, I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think that's a very, very, very great change that they made. And maybe hopefully they can also do that for AO. I unfortunately didn't get to watch any of EU because that was just not in my time zone. Was that also 2 commentators or was it 3?
It was 3, right? Because it was Nendo, and then who was it again? It was Nendo, and then I believe they brought in Ben Zistrel for this one, who wasn't on previously, and then God forgive me, who was the other?
But there
was
were
the
3.
third
There
EU.
were 3.
There were 3,
Okay.
yeah.
And it was like the same system where it was 2+1.
Yeah, it was Leon. So it was Nendo, Leon,
Oh,
and
yeah, Leon.
and Zistrel for EU. But AO was just Kai and Ken, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. As far as I saw, so yeah, they had their work cut out for them. I really applaud their perseverance. But yeah, hopefully we can have this kind of system maybe optimized a bit more in the future. From your perspective, is there anything that you want to see improved on the back end, in any way, shape, or form?
Not that I can really think of. Like, as far as the amount of time that we had to spend on the stream, like, I guess that wasn't really anything on like our side necessarily, as the commentators, but as far as the tournament running, I think that maybe I don't know how this was for other regions, obviously, but I feel like, at least from what I've heard, the time in between rounds could have been a little bit more optimized. We had to. I don't want to say had to, because like we had a lot to talk about in the first place, but we did a lot of like time killing in between rounds, and yeah, I'm just like trying to think of like the best way to express this.
Right.
I
I was watching AO on Friday night, so that was when day 1 was my time, and I wanted to, I remember like finishing joining the stream as like one of the games finished, and then I wanted to see like the next game, and then it just like didn't come. They were basically just on break for a good amount of time, which is understandable, because like maybe the stream game was shorter than the rest of the other games, and what was the time limit? It was a 40 plus 10?
Yeah, 40 plus 10.
40 plus 10, right? So like you probably expect 50 minutes per round, plus at least 10-20 minutes for things to settle down, and for the staff to organize the next rounds and stuff, right? But yeah, I guess at least from the viewer's perspective, it's not that big of a deal, because since they do put up like commercials or like things for the viewers to watch, and then I know on the NA side, you guys just talked about things during the downtime, and for the most part, this kind of downtime is unavoidable, obviously. But maybe if they can optimize it a bit in the back end, I'm not sure what goes into that, then maybe we can have a bit more of a smooth transition, and then have the whole event last a bit shorter, because it is quite a marathon, right?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. There was also a comment by Yuri earlier on saying that the only real major complaint is that there was a little too much downtime. So as you may have surmised, it is really hard to figure out a consistent and reasonable amount of downtime between rounds. I think there's a lot of factors. For one, as you mentioned, the stream game being on a different time or a different count, like a timer, than the rest of the games, is really awkward, especially if the stream game goes long. Because I think at one point in the tournament, we had a 15-minute offset between the stream game and the rest of the tournament. Like the rest of the tournament was done, and then the stream game still had like 15 minutes left. And so it was like, what are we gonna do here? It's like super, super awkward here. The second thing is, if you recall in live events, what happens is after your match is done, we would collect match slips, right? And then if you would like to drop, you would note on the match slip that like I would like to drop now, and then we would take that record back to the tables, and then we'd process it there. Whereas now you report your matches, but dropping isn't something that you can report yourself. You have to like notify a judge. But when a player decides to drop and when a player gets their scores reported, they're like disjointed, right? And so we actually have to wait for players to drop if they want to. because
Oh.
if a player drops after we form a bracket, it just like screws up the bracket.
Because it was in like a separate channel, right, on the Discord.
Right. Yeah. And it's like one of those things where this is where running an event live is so much easier because we get all the information at like one point. Like the player is done, they raise their hand, the judge comes over, we verify the results, and then like there's no more fudging of that. Like that's done.
Yeah.
It's done is done. But now like we have so many different variables because we can't just have the judges. Oh my goodness, we can't have the judges running around through 100 channels. Like, are you guys done? Are you guys done? We don't want to let the player just sit in the channel and like wait for a judge to come over. Like that would be ridiculous, right? And so we have these different reporting mechanisms and these different ways of getting all this, but it actually takes a lot of time for us to compile all that information, which does lead to a lot of downtime. So I think we got some feedback during the tournament that the downtime was too long. So I did actually shorten it. Like I pushed to have it shortened towards the end, and it wasn't like 10-minute breaks anymore, but we still needed the time, like logistically speaking.
Of course,
it was like very difficult.
And it wasn't just like people just like sitting around doing nothing. Obviously, the downtime was needed, necessary for the tournament to proceed to the next stage. So
yeah. And then the last factor actually I think is that the meta is just really slow. I judged all the Vanguard events and also played in some of the Vanguard events myself. Vanguard is 30 minutes plus 10, except most games finish before 30 minutes because then the game is pretty quick. The metas are pretty healthy in this day and age, except for V Premium. And then games just like don't go on too long, right? Like standard is like a 4 or 5 turn format. Like you literally can't survive past 5 turns. It's like pretty well math. Weiss is a 40-minute game plus 10, and games usually go beyond 40 minutes. Like it's like a completely different thing, which really causes the tournaments to drag out. Especially if you end early, you just have to wait like an extra 30 minutes because like half the players in the round are going to go beyond 40 minutes. Yeah. So I don't know how to fix that necessarily, but I mean that's just the nature of the game. Right? It's just the nature of the current game.
Reminds me of way back when in JP meta. This was honestly like when I just started playing, and I was only hearing stories about it. But heal spam in like 2012.
Good old 8-gate format.
It was like little 8-gate heal spam with like Zero No Tsukaima and
Angel Beats, Rewrite sometimes.
But it was just basically like just games would not end, and the tournaments would go on forever. And then I think that was part of the reason why Bushiroad decided they wanted no part of this like just like dawdling slow 8-gate spam heal meta anymore. So then they hit all those sets. They hit
and then Kantai came.
And then they came out with Kantai and Nisekoi, and then people were just dropping like flies. But yeah,
it went out of like 8-gate heal spam.deck into like Hibiki Hatsukaze Junyo goes burr.
Hibiki Hatsukaze Junyo, and then Nisekoi is like, oh, level 3 Marika dead.
Yes.
But yeah, nowadays, obviously, I think the big matchup that comes to me, especially with the representation, is Data Live Mirrors, 8 Standby Mirrors. Those can go on forever. Especially since there are so many things that the players need to think about in terms of like, their plays, where they place their Yoshinos. Every single little thing has ripple effects that will change the outcome of the rest of the game. So for these Data Live players to be piloting precisely, they do need a bit more extra time to think about their plays compared to maybe traditional 1k1 decks. You hit level 1, you play level 1 combos, and then you go off, and there's not too much to think about. You've gone through this process hundreds of times, right? So yeah, I do think that is part of the reason why, like Simu mentioned, 40 plus 10 is not quite enough for a lot of the matchups out there. And especially also the whole online thing does add a bit of kind of just delay compared to face-to-face physical, I would imagine. Players might just be a bit slower, or they need a bit of communication to kind of make sure, okay, this is exactly what you did, all right, or maybe like the camera freezes up or something. Minor things here and there that can make the game go on for maybe 2 or 3 or 5 more minutes longer than it would have otherwise if it were a physical event. So yeah.
Yeah, I think another thing to add with that sort of like ripple effect thing that you brought up, I was noticing that like it was a recurring trend throughout all these like 8 standby games, or like these games where like both players have very high powered boards at like probably around like level 2, is that like option to side just to like not even give your opponent chance to like try to counter. to like use a backup to like protect their board or things like that. That seemed like it was a recurring trend, and like there were a lot of places in those games where I felt like, oh yeah, like this player could side here, or this player probably shouldn't have sided here, and that just adds on to like what you were saying about like the decision making and the like ripple effect, because like there might have been like an instance where it's like, oh, the player, I think this is a good opportunity to side, and then they don't, and then it just rippled into like, oh, they didn't side, this guy countered, they lost their board, now they lost complete control of the board. Oh, the game is now going into the other guy's favor, and it's just like this one decision ends up just snowballing into like all these other things, and it ended up mattering a lot more, I feel, in these like really defensive 8 standby matchups. But then that also goes into like the time thing that you said, where it's like, all right, I gotta think, like if I do this, what implications does this have later on for like my future turns? So it just
that's the kind of thing that just really is really mentally draining, right? That's why you should play decks that are simple. I think one of the big things about having a good competitive deck for a tournament that does run as long as this is if possible, I like decks that are just more straightforward with a bit more linear game plan with a lot maybe less decisions to make, because it's not as if like I don't want to don't think of it as like it's less skill intensive, because honestly you might be gimping yourself if you're forced to make a bunch of decisions every game. You can get mentally drained out. You might make some misplays here and there, and even if you're playing what you think is the best deck in the format, if you can't pilot it perfectly, it might not be the best deck in the format, right? So things like maybe like no, just like if you're playing like 3/2 Shogane, you're like never siding. Like that's a very simple decision. You're playing 1k1 decks, you're generally going to play level 1 combo, and there's not a lot of decisions to be made there. So yeah, I think picking the right deck for you, in particular as a player, I think that is a bit understated, and I think that is part of the reason why we might not see what we perceive to be the best decks top all the time, because maybe some of the best decks of its time are just more difficult to pilot. So player mentality, player strength definitely has a bit to do with that as well. And with that, I think we have talked about almost everything that we wanted to talk about. I mean, we could go on forever about you guys' individual experiences, but I think for the most part we've covered most of our bases. If there's anyone that want to ask anything to either Randall or Simu or myself, feel free to let us know in the chat. But otherwise, I think we will be wrapping up around this point. Maybe just give it like a couple more minutes and interact with chat a bit. So yeah, let's just see what's up.
Yeah, so question in chat, anyone participating in the next one? So hopefully, BS, the next Bushi Spring Fest will be in person. They haven't given any announcements that they're not going to be in person as of now. However, because it's still quite a ways away. We still have a few months, so probably won't hear anything about it until it draws pretty close. And obviously, when it comes and there's like an actual COVID problem, then they'll probably have to cancel or reschedule it to be online or something along those sorts. But for now, tentatively, we are still good to go for in-person event. And I mean, I'm definitely planning on judging the ones that I can go to. That's one thing that online, I guess, has been a really cool opportunity. Is I've been actually able to work with other judges from around or across the country, like people I would never have been able to work with before, and so I will miss working with them in person. But hopefully, we'll have opportunities to do that in the future. As for the next online tournament, I don't believe there is anything scheduled. I don't think there's anything I can say about that. But if you have enjoyed these online events and if you think like this is a good idea for Bushiroad to continue, please give them feedback. Like just reach out with their contact forms and other like methods, on social media. Just kind of like just give them positive feedback, saying like we like these kinds of events. We want to see these more often. Like Bushiroad's not actually that big of a company. They read all this stuff, they see all this stuff, and it all factors in. So yeah, if you want more of these kinds of events, just let them know, and hopefully we will have like online events in the future, even if we do go back to in person.
Randall?
Okay, so as Sam was saying, the next tournament that is scheduled is the supposed Bushiroad Springfest, and if I remember correctly, that's supposed to be a team format, right?
It's
Springfest is
traditionally
usually
team format.
Springfest is like for the last
Has
probably since
historically
like
been, yeah.
yeah, like 2017,
Yeah.
I think. So this is something that I did participate in the past. Typically, I would rather participate in like the Springfest than the Bushiroad Championship Series one, just because the last few BCS have been at Care Expo, and I've been infinitely more interested in like going around getting like Seiyu signatures and doing just like doing con stuff rather than playing tournament. But as far as Springfest, I think that's definitely a possibility to participate in.
And as for myself, I love physical events. I'm not as big of a fan as online events for various reasons. It also is a bit unfortunate that these events are on the weekends, and I obviously have work at Frankenstein's on the weekends. That's when they're open. So taking off these days is extremely detrimental financially. But I do plan on closing shop if physical events come back. For example, like for Springfest, if Springfest is on Saturday and Sunday, or like one of the days or both days, I do plan on closing shop and then participating because I still love playing. And one of my favorite things about going to events is meeting people and playing against people that I don't normally get to play with. So I think that experience is well worth it, despite obviously the implications of the business closing for a day. So yeah, I do want to participate.
Question. So about the slime deck. Yeah, so slime did win NA, and there was another slime that also topped. In AO and EU, there were no slimes. Just only NA had slime players in the top 8. And does it not play well against other decks? I actually think the 8 standby slime deck plays very well against Data Life. I think this is something that the casters also went over in the commentary during the slime games. But yeah, basically Geld combo just gets over Toka offense or Toka can't get over Geld's like offensively, and so you really ruin Data Life chances at like establishing a board at 1. So I actually think if you build it correctly and play it in a certain way, it actually is very good against Data Live, which is, I guess, the big meta contender.
Yeah, I think the big thing that was really emphasized in that particular matchup was who hit level 1 first, or who was able to develop, whether or not the Data Live player was able to develop standbys at level 0, because typically like the way you want to play that matchup as slime, or specifically 8 standby. Obviously, like there are like all 3 builds of slime that are pretty good, but the one that appeared in top 8 was the 8 standby one. And one really big thing about that deck is that you want to be trying to hit level 1 first so that your remove combos don't have to potentially crash into your opponent's big level 1 characters, because he's not that big. And then from there, even if that doesn't go exactly the way you want it to, like maybe you are forced to crash your Rimuru too. From there, what it really depends on is whether or not you're able to secure double Geld. This is something that we went over in the winners interview with Joey, was that double Geld, if he was able to develop double Geld, he felt like he was in like his like safe zone. And I definitely think that being able to develop those 2 copies is a really big part, even if your early game doesn't go optimally, is a really big player in trying to stabilize back into a good position. That being said, if you are forced to crash Rimurus, you're not able to leverage those Gelds defensively until probably like 2 turns later, like 1.5 turns later, if you think of it as like your opponent's turn as like a half turn, I guess.
Yeah. Speaking from experience as someone that really likes a standby slime, at least conceptually wise, I've had really bad games with a standby slime recently, but that's besides the point. The difference between getting one Geld and the difference between getting 2 Gelds is night and day. Like if I'm getting 1 Geld, I don't feel like my deck is very strong. If I'm getting 2 Gelds, I feel like I'm winning board almost all the time. And obviously, as a standby deck, you want to be winning board. So if I don't get 2 Gelds, if I don't trigger a standby on my attacks on the remove combo turn, then things start going downhill pretty frequently. So yeah. Hoping Hololive brings more people into playing Weiss, definitely. It's crazy what the effect of Hololive coming into Weiss has done for the Weiss collector/player community as a whole. I carried Weiss for Tressa's.
Carried Hololive.
Oh, sorry. I saw Weiss. I carried
Better carry Weiss.
I carried JP Hololive when that set came out last year, and the amount of people that came to buy Weiss, that came to buy Hololive, that had no idea what Weiss was before, was astronomically high. Like, I cannot overstate this enough. Where I would just have people come up and they would just point at the Hololive booster box and they would be like, I want it. Especially since like they see that the talents themselves, when JP Hololive first came out, a ton of the talents were hosting product opening streams, right? And they were opening signatures, and they were like maybe pulling their own. I remember very vividly that like I think Aqua pulled her own TDSP, and I was like, what? Rigged? Stream rigged? But yeah, like they know how to market their own product for sure. Bushiroad and Core have a very, very strong working relationship, and as a result, Bushiroad has Hololive locked up and ready to go. They have Hololive in Rebirth for You. They have Hololive in Weiss. They're putting out another Hololive set, I think, in March. I do think with the English release of Hololive, there will be a lot more people, players and collectors alike, or maybe even both, that get into Weiss. I know a lot of people have told me that they were going to get the Japanese version of Hololive when I had it in stock, but then they also realized that there was also going to be the English version coming out next year. So they just said they just wanted to wait for the English. So yeah, I do think I honestly think Hololive is the biggest release in Weiss in the history of Weiss ever. Period. It's not even close.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw like the distribution like getting capped for like distributors just because like the demand was like so high. It's like we can't handle all of it.
It was crazy. I've never seen a Japanese Weiss set get capped ever. But yeah, I wanted like X number of cases and I got like 1/10 of that, and it was only because like I basically pulled some strings that I was even able to get more than what I was originally promised. But thankfully, the reprint did come, and now there's plenty of Hololive for everyone, which is crazy because like it's still selling, like people still want it. But yeah. All right. Yeah, it was an English only tournament. There was a Japanese tournament not too long ago for Heart of the Cards WGP. That was a Japanese only format Japanese format tournament. It was also online naturally, and we got to see a lot of Japanese decks there. I think Factured over here, he's a big fan of Love Live Superstar. Love Live Superstar had a good amount of rep. But I don't think it topped anything. But Love Live Superstar is making the rounds in Japan, though. Love Live Superstar is kind of like...
Superstar was 3 of top 16.
Oh, was it 3 top 16? Okay. Yeah. Okay, it did get a good amount of rep then. Yeah.
It was actually because I ended up getting the information on all the players' decks. I like basically volunteered to be the like compiler for all of that, and. So Love Live Superstar. Okay, well, first of all, as on the topic of Hololive was the most popular deck in the tournament. So it was 85 players, 14 of which were Hololive. So I mean, Hololive fans coming in full force.
Yeah.
But Love Live Superstar, I think, was actually the toppingest deck out of all of them. I think so. So there were 7 people bringing Superstar to the tournament, and out of those 7, 4 of them made top 16.
Nice.
Dang, that's better than the 50% conversion rate. That's crazy.
Yeah. So good news for you, Jimmy. Your one of your favorite Japanese sets has performed very well. It does seem to be a very strong set. Obviously, there's the whole Shioko thing, and that is, I'm not sure.
None of them None of them were playing that though.
Yeah, at least in Japan. I'm not sure if I should call it a problem or anything, but it is kind of like an interactive combo that just kills you from like mid two.
Honestly, you don't need the Shiokos. Dan has been putting the work into me with just the 1/1
With the
TD
1/1.
It doesn't matter. I just die from 2/4. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, we don't want to get off the topic too much here. Was the most popular iteration of Ruby 8 door with Cinder? I believe so. Yeah, I believe out of all the decks that I think we saw, given the limited information we had, and just from public perception, I do think 8 door Trial Deck Ruby into level 3 Cinder was the most popular deck, and most of them did operate on the premise of very similar, or most of them did run with a good number of the same cards as deck options. For example, the level 1 Nolan Freezer for standby matchups, and just being a good card overall, as well as a very common line of 4 Neon Cat, 3 Clean Cut as the level 0 game, being able to deal with almost anything. If your opponent goes first, Neon Cat just blink, just bomb decks that immediately, which is just very powerful. The level 1 Ruby combo being able to crack open standby. Level 2, obviously the level 2 Weiss. Just the deck overall just has a ton of offensive potential that can just really break open almost any sort of board out there. I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people were attracted to that build, especially if your idea of beating the meta is beating standby, which I think a lot of people were trying to beat standby there.
From what I'm seeing, the 8 standby Ruby build was the most popular, but only slightly.
Oh, okay. So yeah, according to Ian, 8 standby was more popular, which is also.
Do you have the numbers on that, Randall? Sorry.
At least from NA, I think that when I looked at it, it was like 7, 8 standbys and like 6, 8 gates, something like that.
Okay, so pretty similar.
Okay.
Standby has a slight edge. Yeah, I think when the set first released, I think most people were obviously testing the Ruby. I think the Ruby was one of like the standout cards of the set, especially given that we also have level 3 Neapolitan, which really puts Ruby over the top as a consistent finisher. Because otherwise, especially if you're playing 8 standby, your opponent can just crash into your board very easily, and then Ruby's not going to have anything to do with a climax combo. But Neapolitan not only putting characters on the board, but also grabbing your own climax makes that very consistent. And then the level 2 Pura also is a very, very good card. Not necessarily something you always use, but the threat of it being used is enough for your opponent to make slightly suboptimal, for example, deck refreshes or decisions in their gameplay. So 8 standby being popular is also very not surprising at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. We are just approaching 6 o'clock. We've gone on for about 1.5 hours. I think this is a pretty good time to stop. But I do want to thank once again Simu and Randall for helping BRO go on very smoothly. The overall product was extremely good. Also want to give shout outs to all of the production staff, the other commentators for the other regions, and everyone involved in making this event possible, as well as the players themselves. I'm really happy to see both veterans and relatively newcomers playing in this event, and everyone just having a ton of fun. That's just really what card games is about, and getting together and sharing a hobby, I think, is just really nice to see. And hopefully we can see more of these events in the future. Any closing words?
I can go first. Yeah, just this is the second time we're doing an online tournament, and I'm just so impressed at how much better it was in the first one. Obviously, the first one, we didn't know anything, and this time we definitely are improving a lot, and we're going to continue to improve. We're just going to keep getting better at this. So, hopefully, a few years down the line, our online tournaments are going to be like just perfect. So, yeah, just really excited. It's just a really good opportunity, and it's like also one of those things where, like, normally speaking, I'm only like judging and doing this work like twice a year. But then if online tournaments do become a more prevalent thing, then maybe I could actually do more of this throughout the year. That'd be kind of nice instead of this being like a biannual celebration.
So you do like judging quite a bit then, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like it's really fun.
Okay.
I mean,
good to
it
hear.
just reminds me that like, oh yeah, I really like doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think on my end, so the thing is that like getting into this like commentator role was only really a product of like the pandemic, right? And so I'm hoping that moving forward, if like whether they keep doing online tournaments or not, I hope that they allow me to keep doing this commentator stuff. Like even in like in person, I'd be pretty down because it's just as I've said earlier on, it's more of a fun thing for me than anything, just because I get to like take a look at what's going on with all the players and try to like convey how fun and how like varied Weiss Schwarz is, because a lot of people that don't know a lot about the game seem to just have that impression sometimes that it's like, oh, it's just like this anime game and it's super sacky and things like that. But as we've said, there's like a lot of skill that goes into it, and there's a lot that I think has yet to be explored. And we definitely saw that this weekend. Like, I think something that Tony was repeatedly saying on the cast was we have these players constructing this narrative for themselves. And like the biggest example I think for the weekend was definitely that Bofree player over in Europe, just basically going down in history as like the standby slayer with his build and how he decided to play the deck. So
yeah, taking down.
I think it's
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely think that from the role of a commentator, I think it's been a really great opportunity for me to kind of like put my place into the Weiss Schwarz community. And yeah, I just hope that Bushiroad would allow me to come back and do it some more.
Cool. Yeah. Hopefully, maybe fingers crossed. Maybe you can do Worlds, get a free trip to Japan.
That's actually, unironically, that's the dream. That would be so sick.
So awesome. That would be so awesome. All right. Yeah, fingers crossed. So that does wrap up our Bushiroad Rumble Online 2021 recap and reflections stream. Hope you guys enjoyed it. For those that didn't get to catch the live stream, it will be up as a VOD, so you guys can listen to our thoughts about it on your own free time. But until next time, this has been Mike, Randall, and Simu from the Tressa Collectibles team, and we'll see you guys in the next one.